We are delighted to be joined on the line by Pat Buchanan, advisor to three presidents, conservative commentator, author, columnist. Thank you, Pat, for being here.
Delighted, Raymond. How are you?
Now, Pat, what do you make of it? Of course, Bill Bratton was there responding to the terror we're seeing unfold in New York. An explosive device went off. One person is in custody. It appears he's a Bangladeshi in his 20s, has been living in Brooklyn, and has been in the country for 7 years. What does this tell us about the threat we face from within, the radicalization that ISIS is capable of inciting? And what do you think this means to the president and his vision for creating a travel ban and protecting, or vetting, rather, extreme vetting, those who want access to the United States?
Well, clearly, I think it reinforces the arguments the president has been making that an awful lot of people have come into this country who haven't been properly vetted and are not friends of the United States and intend real harm, specifically the murder of innocent American citizens. Now, I don't know all the details of this, but apparently it was a pipe bomb, Raymond, and obviously it was set off to do maximum damage among civilians going to work. So I think this reinforces the president's case, I think, and it does say, and here's someone who's been here 7 years in Bangladesh, and I guess we don't know yet whether he came in radicalized or he became radicalized by something on the internet. But it makes the case for everything the president has been saying, that we really haven't been doing the job well, and that we have been diffident, and we have not been really focused as we should be on what's going on in the world and what's coming to America.
Mm-hmm. And no, Pat, this is it's shocking when this stuff happens and you see the anxiety that it is meant to create. But ISIS put a call out. They wanted a New York attack months ago, just before Thanksgiving, rather. They renewed their call for an attack. And we've seen a series of these. In Chelsea, there was the underwear bomber in Times Square that was foiled. So this is becoming a pattern. And there seems to be an unwillingness from some to see it that way. Pat, I want to move on to this Roy Moore race. I'm going to play a little bite. This is Roy Moore from an interview he did this weekend addressing these allegations that have sort of overshadowed this entire race. I'll play this for you and then get your reaction.
I have written cards, graduation cards. I have known families. I've known a lot of people throughout my life, but these allegations are completely false. I did not date underage women. I did not molest anyone.
Pat, your thoughts, is that enough? It looks like from the polling, he's going to beat Doug Jones by 49 to 45%.
Well, let me say on the Doug Jones thing, and frankly, in my view, and I've said so, that I would vote Republican in Alabama because Doug Jones would vote for against a Scalia justice or a Gorsuch justice. Mm-hmm. And the third branch of government is at stake, Raymond. And probably the overturning, or maybe the overturning of Roe v. Wade may be at stake. And I think I would vote for the individual who's going to probably put an end to the slaughter of the unborn. So that's why I would vote Republican here. Now, on the Roy Moore thing, I mean, I think what you have is enough, certainly enough in these accusations for people to conclude that he was indeed dating girls who were teenagers. I don't think they've got enough information here to conclude it beyond a reasonable doubt, especially when you see the forgery involved by one of these women who said he signed his yearbook. So right. This is basically my view, and my expectation would be that Roy Moore should win for the reason that, as was pointed out, I saw this morning, Barack Obama, who was a fairly strong Democratic candidate, never even got 40% in Alabama.
Mm-hmm. No, I think what you're seeing is the disconnect between those who are reporting the story and the Alabama voters, who take a very different view of this situation. And we're going to talk about this later. We're having Ralph Reed and some evangelical leaders on, because there does seem to be a struggle in the hearts and minds of these voters between the allegations they're hearing and the values that Roy Moore has long championed and that connect with the voters of Alabama.
Well, exactly, and this is exactly right, and you're really forced to make a choice here. If Roy Moore were running against a conservative Republican, now, again in the primary. I don't know that he would win the primary there. But I do believe what you're looking at and what people see of the Democratic Party is basically hostile to all their views and values. They will vote that way in the Senate. They put at risk the Supreme Court and all these other policies. So that they simply are saying, as they did with Donald Trump, who faced similar allegations and things, you know, I know he may have done some things wrong back there, but darned if I'm going to go out and vote for Hillary Clinton because of that.
Right.
I mean, I don't want Hillary Clinton in the White House, period. And Trump is saying a lot of things and doing a lot of things, flawed though he may be and have been, that I want to see in the White House. So
but Pat,
I'm making this cold call.
We now see the drumbeat, and some of us were saying this when we first started hearing Al Franken and Conyers being thrown out of office without a hearing, really. Neither of these men were subjected to an ethics probe. Remember Bob Packwood, it took, I think it was 3 months, or 3 years rather, 3 years of inquiry. These guys didn't get 3 minutes of inquiry, and they were thrown out of the House and the Senate. Now we have a group of senators coming forward. In fact, there's a press conference today. Megyn Kelly is hosting some of these accusers of the president coming forward. And you already have congressional leaders saying we need a congressional inquiry into the president's behavior. Your thoughts on this and the politically...
Look, this issue was decided. The women were heard, their allegations or testimony in public on television, and the American people were given the choice. And they decided that if whether true or false or elaborated or exaggerated, that we believe that Donald Trump is preferable to be president of the United States to Hillary Clinton. And that's how we're going to vote, and that's what happened. So I think that the Senate, of course, I mean, in the partisan way, they may bring this up. Right. But I don't think you can take this as some kind of a step toward impeachment or something like that. This country, Raymond, is so politically divided, it is really balkanized.
Right.
In the sense that one side does not credit the accusations of another simply because they are made by the other.
Great observation, Pat. And the thing that plays into the hand of this, the president, of course, has been calling out what he calls fake news at the networks. And then you had CNN last week that reported what they called a bombshell, the smoking bomb, the smoking gun. And it was this email between Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks, which they misdated. They said it dropped on September 4th. It ended up dropping on September 14th after WikiLeaks had already made this stuff public. So it was a big egg on their face. I want to play David Frum's reaction to this news.
Excluding Fox, the worst mistakes that press organizations have made in the coverage of Trump has precisely occurred in their overzealous effort to be fair to the president.
Was that a case of them trying to be fair to the president, Pat Buchanan?
I think they were trying to be first.
Yeah, exactly. Strike the first blow. Go ahead.
Let me say, my friend E.J. Dionne has got a column this morning, and he's very grim and worried about what's coming. But I do think something is happening. Unlike Watergate, where there was a general perception, obviously, and a truth to it, that certain things were the stupidity of the break-in, and then there was a cover-up, and people had lied. Mm-hmm. What you've got here is, I think the two sides are so divided that whatever the Mueller and them come in with, if they try to impeach, people are going to see this as basically us against them. That's all it is. Their side is using this to take down our president. We're not going to let this happen. And you see a lot of Republicans going after Mueller, going after Comey, going after these individuals in the special prosecutor's office. Mm-hmm. So I think that the idea that it's going to be open and shut the way the Watergate thing was before the House Judiciary Committee, if we come to that, and we won't until 2019, I think there's going to be real resistance. It's going to be seen as this sort of one of these third world situations where our guys get control of the legislature and then we overthrow the government. So I think there's going to be a real battle beyond the legalities of it all and the facts of it all.
Pat, you have a column that I just read on Michael Flynn, of course, at the center of Mueller's probe, and at the center of making a case that there was Russian collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. You believe that the contact that Flynn made with the Russian ambassador is entirely defensible. Why?
Well, here's what I mean. What he did was, look, this was not an ordinary citizen. This was, you had the president-elect and you had the national security advisor designate. And Barack Obama makes this decision to throw 35 diplomats out of the country and shut down their country houses, throw them out of there. Mm-hmm. And so the president and Flynn, obviously, look, their hope for some kind of rapprochement with Russia would be severely damaged if Putin reacted naturally and threw out all these Americans. So they call the ambassador and tell him, cool your jets, don't overreact. We're going to be in office in 3 weeks, and we'll take a look at this. We'll take a look at the sanctions. We want talks. We want a fresh slate. It seemed to me that's exactly what Trump promised the American people he would do, and I don't have any problem at all with Flynn doing it. They should have notified the White House and said, look, we're going to do this because we disagree with your policy and we think you're sabotaging our policy. But the idea, why did Flynn not just tell the truth? Especially as an intelligence officer, he knew full well he was being taped.
That's amazing. Yep. No, it was, and where do you think this ends, Pat? I mean, the fact is he did go and cop a plea deal here. You don't give people a plea deal if there's nothing, if there's no information, if you don't have some smoking gun on the target of your investigation. So what do you think Flynn knows or did or is willing to admit to?
There's one point that's sort of limited here, which is, why didn't Flynn tell him about how they had all colluded with Russia? If Flynn and Trump had colluded with Russia and admitted it, and then the special prosecutor would have had the smoking gun and would have indicted him for it. Instead, he indicted Flynn for what? For lying. And he wasn't lying about, breaking into the email servers and the rest of it at the DNC and John Podesta. So the point here is, on the original cause of the investigation, did Trump and the folks collaborate in stealing these documents and giving them to the Russians and giving them to WikiLeaks? They got nothing. They're moving into these other areas and these other charges. Now, Flynn's got a lot of charges. I mean, the so-called Foreign Agents Registration Act, he didn't handle that. That's Mickey Mouse stuff. But I think it looks to me like they don't have the goods yet. I mean, if you're talking about convicting Trump in public opinion of doing what it was alleged they did, which was collude in the stealing of these documents and the publication of these documents.
Mm-hmm. Pat Buchanan, always insightful. Thank you so much for being here, and we will stay in touch, and Merry Christmas, Pat.
Same to you, my friend. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.